Welcome to the Bounty Zero X podcast. I'm your host, Angelo Adam, founder and CEO of Bounty Zero X. Bounty Zero X is a decentralized bounty hunting network powered by the BNTY token. Today is August 27th, 2018, and my guest on the show is Jonny Peters. Jonny founded Gazecoin in 2017, a coin whose goal is to monetize VR and AR by measuring eye tracking with advertisers rewarding actual engagement. Gazecoin exists to bridge the gap between the promise of VR, AR, and the ability for brands and content owners to capitalize on it. So, Jonny, welcome to the show.
Yeah, no, thanks. Great to have me aboard, and looking forward to giving you some insights.
So tell me a little bit, how you got into crypto originally? When did you first hear about it, and what were your thoughts at the time?
Yeah, sure. Well, it goes back a few years. I was actually, the story begins, my crypto story begins back in 2012, actually, when I set out on this journey to build kind of the world's, most epic virtual reality, mixed reality world. This is a little bit before VR had actually happened. It was just kind of on the cusp of happening. And I called that world the Dream Channel. That was the name of it. And I was actually doing a master's in film and television at the time. So it was kind of my main mission was basically to come up with a whole way that this Dream Channel ecosystem could work. So I started looking at game currencies actually, and I figured that like if these VR worlds of the future were going to function properly, they needed to have a currency that could actually be ubiquitous across all of them. Like you needed to be able to earn in one world and then move to another world and actually use those earnings there. Like it seemed kind of ridiculous that you would run into brick walls every time you wanted to jump between worlds. So I started looking at solutions there, and then so early 2013, I came across Bitcoin and the blockchain, and I was immediately just, this is it. This is the solution. I could just see how the blockchain worked and just that it was exactly what I was looking for, and it had all the answers. So that was the beginning of the journey, and so Dream Channel suddenly had a thing called Dream Coin, and that was the beginning of the journey towards Gazecoin. So yeah, that's how it sort of started, and it was a long time. It's been a long time coming, but VR has been a long time coming too. So I think a lot of things have happened between then and now, but yeah, that was how it started.
Yeah. So for listeners who aren't familiar with Gazecoin is inextricably linked to the VR and AR ecosystem and the world of VR and AR. So just a quick overview: VR, AR headsets like Google and a lot of other companies like Oculus and are investing in VR, AR as this new technology, which will provide another dimension for engaging with content.
Correct.
And so we've seen a couple headsets be released, and there's been talk of VR for decades at least. And so one of the limitations on it has been technology and processing speed and graphics and a number of things. But it seems like we're kind of entering into, or have been at least for the past 5 or 6 years, this new era where kind of the technology has caught up to the point where the user experience in these digital VR worlds, which were sort of like science fiction, sort of like what people had thought could be possible, but never really implemented in like a mainstream way. Now people are starting to say that could potentially become like a mainstream technology. So that's kind of like the backdrop for Gazecoin, right?
Yeah, I mean, it is. And I think there's a few problems that need to be solved to get VR and AR over the line, right? So, and that was pretty much what I set out to do with Gazecoin. So it's great having this vision to have this epic Dream Channel VR world, but that wasn't going to be possible unless a couple of things could be solved. So one of those things was actually having an actual seamless currency, which is what Gazecoin is now. So I guess the problem we're trying to solve there is that within VR there wasn't a new payment mechanism that had come with it. It had still inherited all the old school payment systems from the normal 2D web. So I figured that wasn't going to work. So the two main problems I'll just outline right now. But the first one was just overcoming that. So Gazecoin, what that does is that it actually allows transactions to happen literally by looking at things. So, you look at a video, then you actually, a transaction happens for that engagement. And you can literally float from experience to experience and world to world without having to kind of take your goggles off, get a credit card out, and then log into the next one, which is kind of how VR was about a year ago. So that was the first problem, right, that we've been trying to solve. The second problem, which is probably bigger really, is the problem with eyeballs, is that you actually, up until recently, you've needed a pair of VR goggles to have any kind of access at all. So this is another part of what we've been trying to solve with Gazecoin as well, and that we've not just developed a currency that allows people to engage seamlessly just by looking, but we've also actually built a platform that allows any VR world, content, etc., to actually distribute itself without the need for VR goggles. So this is called WebGL, would be the kind of technical term for it, but it allows you to literally cruise about in VR worlds almost like a PC game and move around literally by just the mouse and then experience a whole VR world almost like you're playing a PC game without goggles. And then if you need to jump in at any point, you can just plug in and then you go. So that way we're getting around all the barriers of entry and actually making it a mainstream proposition. So that were the two main things we've been trying to solve with Gazecoin to achieve what you just talked about.
Mm-hmm. And you guys have a patent pending technology, is that correct?
Yes. So just it's funny enough, sometimes the simplest and most obvious things are kind of the best. But we patented the idea of actually eye tracking, triggering content, and then triggering a blockchain transaction based on that trigger. So that's pending. And when I say it's a simple idea, it really is, because the word gaze, G-A-Z-E, in Gazecoin comes from this thing called gaze control. Gaze control is actually the mechanic that drives VR across the board. That's how all VR worlds are built. They're built with this technology or functionality that allows you to, when you go into a VR world, nothing happens until you look at it. This is called gaze control. So what happens is you could be walking through I always use the example of walking through the Jurassic World. If you're walking through a Jurassic World and there's the sound of a dinosaur coming behind you, the dinosaur doesn't actually come until you turn, look at it. This is called gaze control. So Gazecoin logically it makes a transaction based on that trigger. So yeah, that's the kind of the nuts and bolts of the tech and the patent.
So there have been a number of interesting technological developments that have come along. So blockchain and then developments in VR, all which together can support this type of user interface and interactive experience for the user. So you guys have developed a couple different applications or ecosystems that the Gazecoin runs on. So you guys have Dreamcoin, Hexcoin, Hologram, and FXXX. So there's Dreamcoin. And so Dreamcoin is a film and series about futuristic esports games run by cryptocurrency gangsters played in a metaverse called the Dream Channel. Dream Frames is a companion crypto collectible game that funds films by allowing investors and fans to buy and trade unique frames in a film. So you have these applications that are set on top of Gazecoin. So can you tell us a little bit about these different applications? So you have the Dreamcoin. Maybe tell us a little about that and some of the other ones.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, the Gazecoin model was always built on the fact that there would be multiple worlds inside this ecosystem. Now, the ecosystem I'm talking about here is not Gazecoin's ecosystem. It's the ecosystem called the metaverse, right? So the metaverse is the connected VR and AR space. Essentially, it's the immersive internet, immersive web. So inside that immersive web, there's always going to be lots of worlds and lots of things going on. So anything that's the vision I had was that anybody that wants to monetize their world using the Gazecoin technology could take a world template from us and use that, and then could obviously use the Gazecoin analytics system to drive transactions. Now, we weren't going to tell people they had to call it Gazecoin, right? Any game, every game and every world, they kind of want their own currency. They kind of want their own brand. They don't need Gazecoin's just in the back powering things. So, people don't even need to even know it exists. So Dreamcoin is a good example of that. Dream Channel is a big game in its own right, which has a lot of elements to it. And it's sort of like in our white paper, our Gazecoin white paper, there's a big outline of that game. And the idea of Dream Channel was to create this sort of, I guess, proof that like going back to my original masters, it's the proof of concept for the entire ecosystem, sort of a world that was using Gazecoin in every possible way, so people could look at it and say, wow, that's amazing. I want to build my game world, and I'll do it in this way. So that's where Dream Channel started. But there's other worlds as well. Like Hexcoin is a great example of a what we call a creator token. And there's a superstar DJ we're working with. His name's Don Diablo. He's kind of ranked in the top 10 usually of the DJ magazine top 100. He's got over 3 million fans, and he's a futurist, and he's also very aware that the future of his audience engagement with his content is going to go way beyond YouTube, way beyond Facebook, and so what he saw our model, Dream Channel model. He said, I want one of those, and he's got this world called Hexagonia. Hexagonia has Hexcoin, and inside Hexagonia there's a whole story unfolding, which is all based around the story of Don Diablo, not his real life story, his fantasy story, which is basically what the kids. He has a huge 15 to 18-year-old audience, and they engage with that story through his music and all other ways. So there's a good example of how a DJ or a globally relevant artist could use the Gazecoin model to create a world that works for him, and essentially a whole new media channel that doesn't exist, and a whole new way of making money and rewarding audiences. So that's a really good example of that. And then we have a very interesting world called FXXX, Fantasy. Fantasy is actually a city based on Amsterdam. So Amsterdam, obviously, many of us have been to Amsterdam. Amsterdam has a lot of fun things going on, but it also has a red light district in it. And so Fantasy is a story world, sort of like Dream Channel, a bit different to Hexagonia, but just it's another world with another story. And the story basically is all about this world where your alter ego can actually go and actually embrace itself and in adult content. So it's an adult VR adult content play, but it's very different in that it's not just like your typical VR adult sites. It's a whole world that you can move around in and walk around in, and you literally go to Amsterdam. You walk around the red light district just the way many of us have done when we've been to Amsterdam. And as you walk around and journey and go down in little alleyways and things, you come across characters and adult stars living in windows. And and if you decide to step inside, you literally, it's a pretty interesting thing that what happens next is you actually embody the person inside the window. So it's just VR's, this concept, even though it's an adult concept and it's something kind of quite risque, it really pushes the envelope as to what VR can actually do. You can actually put yourself inside someone else's shoes and have an experience that is so completely out of this world. So that's what FXXX aims to do. It really change the game in terms of what VR can actually offer people and deliver it in a way that's way not like a typical adult play. It's almost like an experiment, a place to go and experiment with your own fantasies and jump in and out of them and see what you like. Yeah, so it's a very interesting play.
So is the team that's working on FXXX the same team that's working on Gazecoin, or is it a separate team?
Yeah, so it's the same tech team in the background, so it's the same platform. In terms of the team that's putting the actual content deals together, that's us as well at the moment. So, but in terms of the actual fantasy team that will actually end up executing on the actual world over the coming years, we're putting together a very interesting team, which is made up of personalities, fashion stars, adult stars, brands, people like that. So that's all coming together now. In some ways, you have to kind of create the vision to allow people to buy into it sometimes, rather than sort of walking around and saying, hey, I want to have this great idea for this futuristic adult VR world and getting people to engage with it. We have to kind of build it. Say, look, there it is. This is what it is, and have people go, oh, that's what you mean. Because it's so leading edge in terms of what we are achieving with this futuristic, immersive Amsterdam world. No one's seen it before. No one's ever really had a VR experience quite like it. So we have to kind of build it, and now we're in the process of bringing on board all the various partners that will turn it into what it can be. And it's more of an aggregation place. It's not competitive in any way with any other VR adult players out there. There's storefronts, virtual nightclubs, discotheques, bars, all kinds of virtual real estate inside this virtual Amsterdam world that any brand or personality or individual can move into, or they can either buy it or rent these properties inside this world. So it's a very decentralized, open universe, if you like, that anyone can engage with. Sort of brings people together in a whole new way.
So when a user is in the world and they're in the red light district in Amsterdam, there's virtual real estate that people can buy, and then they can monetize that through, according to the white paper, they can monetize the land in the red light district and have their own storefronts. And part of that monetization is where the Gazecoin component comes in.
Correct.
So Gazecoin can calculate various metrics on what a user spends time on in this virtual world. So, for example, there are a number of ways to monetize this. So you can monetize it through charging advertisers to display ads in these virtual worlds and in these virtual landscapes that users are visiting. And then the advertisers pay the content owners who own this real estate in this virtual world. And then some of the metrics include the fixation, number of fixations, which can you describe what you mean by some of these metrics? There's dwell time, percent of time in an area, number of fixations.
There's even a thing in there for an element in there for metric in there for pupil dilation, which is interesting. So that depends on what headset you're wearing. But yeah, we've developed what we call the gaze analytics system, which basically measures how people interact inside any gaze-driven world. Now, it's up to each individual world to work out which metric, whether they use all of that or some of that. It's whatever works for the business model that's taking place in that particular world. The most important metric in this particular world, in fantasy, is actually it's quite simple. It's really just based on what we call dwell time. So the idea being a fixation is each thing you go and visit, right? So, and there are rewards for things like repeat fixations and things like that. So without getting too technical, so what happens is that if the world of fantasy has this coin called FXXX coin, right? So that's the coin that people earn or even have to buy to do VIP things inside the world. So the reward system inside the world is triggered by a number of different things. So the world itself will reward the actual content provider for things like repeat fixation. So people come back to something again and again and again. That content itself earns rewards, or the content provider earns extra rewards which they can give out. So that's a sort of an example of how, just one example of the many facets of the analytics system. But the main business model inside fantasy is based around, quite simple really. It's basically that I walk down the street and I'm walking along and I turn to my right and I see a fantasy standing in a window and I think, well, that looks pretty interesting. I gaze at it for long enough for this to say, to know that I'm interested. Suddenly I dissolve into the room and I'm suddenly embodying one of the characters inside the scene. So that's kind of how you jump in and out. Now, and then what happens is once I'm engaged, there's an actual earnings system where I earn fantasy for the amount of time that I'm engaged up to a certain point. So I'm actually earning coins. That's like watching a trailer kind of thing. So while I'm experiencing the trailer part of it, I'm earning coins up to a certain point. But then if I decide, and then it finishes, then if I decide if I want to, I did like that, didn't like that, but did like it and I want to go back for more, I can use those rewards to actually access the premium content, which is basically just like how anything works. Now you're jumping into the VIP area and you either have enough tokens to jump through to that area or you don't. And the idea is that then what you don't have, you can buy. So there's it's a freemium model. So that's the kind of the really basic way that the mechanic works. And why it's a good thing is that I can just jump into one star's apartment and I did like that, didn't like that, jump back out, keep walking along, walk down, turn a corner, jump into something else, jump in, jump out. I'm jumping in and jumping out and I have this seamless experience where I'm just going anywhere I want. I don't have to think about anything other than what I like doing. I'm earning rewards all the time. And for anything that's really, really special, I can buy extra to do those things. So it just doesn't. There's no barrier to the experience. And then what's even more amazing is that I could jump into Adult Star A's apartment. If I'm inside there, and I think that's pretty cool. We have these things called wormholes that connect apartments with other worlds. So that star or that brand even could actually say, well, what we're really trying to do is lure people through to our world, which is connected, and they can have this wormhole on the wall. It's kind of like a similar business model then kicks into the way the internet currently works with people driving traffic from certain sites to, from aggregated sites to actual specific sites, similar kind of thing. So if Adult Star A has a wormhole connecting to wherever it is, and I jump into that wormhole, fly through the wormhole, land in this new world, if I spend any money there, there's a kickback to the referral. So what we're really doing here is we're not really reinventing the wheel as far as the way the web works. We're just making it seamless in VR, which it currently isn't. So yeah, we really think that the model we have in fantasy is going to work, because it's just based on the way things already work. It just makes it really easy for people. So yeah, that's essentially, I could go into a lot of depth, but that's the basic kind of way the analytics system works.
Great. So FXXX is having a land rush. So the land rush is basically an event where there's opportunity for users to purchase this real estate. So this is sort of like some of these other virtual land platforms have like land offerings. Like the one that comes to mind is like Decentraland. Is it similar to that or different, or could you compare and contrast the differences between?
Yeah, sure. There's a few differences. The main difference would be that this is a fully functional red light city from day one. You don't have to build anything. It really is a matter. It's literally like buying something, not even buying it off the plan. You're actually walking down. You can, in about a couple of weeks' time, you'll be able to go to the city, the whole city, walk around, look at the things you want to buy, possibly look at the property, like literally right there at eye level. Go, well, I'll take that, and bid on it. So one of the main benefits, I guess, of the fantasy world's existing functionality is that as soon as you buy a property, if you win the bidding, so the way that the Decentraland worked is that you bought mana tokens, and then once the sale had finished, you then use those tokens to bid on land. Fantasy is different. It works a little bit like CryptoKitties in that you use Ethereum to bid on. So it's literally a world that you bid to buy property. You don't need fantasy coins to do that. Fantasy coins come later. They're the currency of the world once the world starts trading. So you basically bid on property using Ethereum, and at the end of the actual auction period, the person with the highest bid wins the property. Now, what happens then, which is I guess another advantage we hope is a real advantage about having an existing world, is that as soon as you actually own the property, you get this thing called an ERC 721 rent token, which we've been developing, and that allows you to flip that to anyone that wants to rent your property. So most people who buy land in these sort of adult worlds aren't exactly adult stars, so they can't really do much with the land that's going to really make money. So the idea is that an adult star could move in, or a brand could move in, and they move in for nothing. They just move in, and then what happens is that you flip them the rent token, and then you take a rev share of any fantasy coin earnings that take place inside the world. You also get an allocation of fantasy coins from our user growth pool, which can be allocated to the property, which you can use to actually give rewards to people for coming in. So you're kind of ready to go from the get-go. You can start making money from day one. It's not this. There's no kind of 2-year development period that's going to happen where you have to try and build something that's going to work. So that's a real advantage. So we think that we could really, even though we're different to Decentraland, I think we'd love to work with them. So I think I'm not sure if you read it in the white paper, but we actually have a what we call the BTTS, which is an actual system an exchange system that we've built. It's named after our CTO, Boki. It's Boki Pubar, his name is. So it's Boki's token teleportation system, it's called. It actually allows people to actually connect their land with other worlds and actually have, through a wormhole, send people through a wormhole to another world, land there, and then in the process, tokens that you need for that world are exchanged for the tokens you need in the world you came from. So we've developed a whole process not only to make money, but also to make money by sending people somewhere else. So that allows us to work with other places like Decentraland. So why not have an apartment in Fantasy and another one in Decentraland, and you can send people between the two. So I guess in terms of talking about competitors, I really don't feel that there are any competitors for us. I think we want to work with everyone. We have a system that allows us to all work together inside. The metaverse is too big a space to be building walls and stopping people from jumping from one place to the other. You've got to create, it's almost like saying a website is competing with another website that's in the same genre space. They make a lot more money if they share traffic. So that's kind of how we're approaching it. We're really excited to share traffic with other worlds. And actually, if we don't start doing that, then the metaverse won't expand the way it should. And that's kind of how we've been approaching our Gazecoin tech mantra is that we want to solve the problems of the metaverse, make connectivity the number one thing that everyone can do seamlessly, and have transactions happen without the need to think about it. So that's kind of that's how we're approaching things.
So the land sale is taking place on September 16th. So that's in around 4 weeks from now, from the time of this recording.
Yeah, I mean when I say it takes place, what that means is that you can go in and start looking at the virtual world and walk around it and start seeing what you might want to buy. So we haven't actually put a date on when the auction takes place. We're going to let people go in and look at it and opt in to want to be part of it first, build the audience, build the community around the space first before we start saying, hey, this is the date. I think we need to just really kind of like listen to the community, work with them on what feels like the right time to do the auction. So we haven't put dates on that yet. So right now it's open for viewing on September 16th.
Mm-hmm. So currently you can put your name on a whitelist to register for the sale, or is that opening?
Yeah, that's open now as well. So if you go to FXXX.io/land-rush, if you go there, you'll see trailers, explaining how the whole thing works, and you can register to get on the whitelist. And what that does is it gives you a 30%. If you get on now before September 16, it gives you a 30% bonus for any property that you might want to buy. And there's also really great that to get that maximum bonus, you get it by purchasing the property with bidding on the property using Gazecoin. So there are all kinds of perks for Gazecoin holders to use Gazecoin in the process, of course, because we're trying to build that ecosystem. So why not give Gazecoin holders the advantages and drive people to want to start buying and using Gazecoin.
And so the land model is something, it's finite and expandable. So how do you prevent like a lot of property coming onto the market, and then is it released over time? And so you have just different unique parcels of the universe and the city available for bidding and auction. And then do they all come on at the same time, or is it like scaled over time? And are there like minimums in place, and what does it start at? Yeah,
sure. So the starting point is, we're literally mirroring the real red light district that exists, right? So basically, we're really trying to be as literal as we can be, while at the same time, this is an augmented world, right? So it is set in the future. It is actually set on Mars. That's where the whole city is located. So it is pretty out there as far as a concept's concerned. But yeah, if you go to the real Amsterdam, where the real red light district is kind of the starting point for us. So there's a hub sector, which is basically a hub zone, which has all the different fantasy is broken into 18 different theme sectors, right? So there's 18 fantasy zones, right? And those fantasy zones range from things like DJs to like rock stars and things like that, right? It's pretty going out there as far as like what people might want to window shop for, and it's definitely not a thing just for guys. It's like it's a thing for probably more skewed towards women than it is towards guys. So which is a whole interesting thing in its own right. I can come back and expand on that, but yeah. So basically you have these different sectors inside this main little hub area in the original red light district. The first place that you can bid on, they're basically red light windows, and we haven't put a reserve price on those yet, but it's going to be somewhere around $500 US. That's going to be the starting point. So that's just to give you around one, just over maybe one Ethereum, something like that. So we're just trying to get the price exactly right. And but basically that's the starting point. And then that's phase one. And then phase two, we have these other kind of zones, which are kind of more the sort of, there's a zone around a place called Vondel Park, which is, I don't know if you've been to Amsterdam, there's a really beautiful area called Vondel Park, which is basically where a lot of, luxurious homes are located. So that's kind of more your kind of like zone for rock stars and people like that to move into. There's also another zone which is kind of along one of the main canals, which is another kind of like, more of an area for sort of more wealthy sort of, loft apartments and things like that. So that's so those other zones will open up once the main red light area is sold out. So yeah, Nick, that you'll probably find that the brands and people like that be more likely to take those outer areas, or hip hop stars. There's actually a hip hop zone out around Vondel Park by a lake out there. So we've actually been chatting to quite a few people from the hip hop industry who've already taken an interest in grabbing those kind of more elaborate like properties. So it's going to be quite an interesting ecosystem. But the starting point is to get bids on the kind of main hub area, which is based on the original red light district in Amsterdam.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about you guys were recently at a trade show. How did that go? Where was that?
Sure. There's a traveling trade show that goes around the world. It's called Sexpo, which is a really interesting kind of concept. It's like a trade show, and it's all about, adult concepts and sex toys and all that kind of stuff. It's actually pretty interesting when you go along. It's really fun. It's actually full of like couples, and it's not like anything. It's not sleazy at all. It's actually really, really interesting, and a lot of people go to find out about just fun fantasy things that are on offer right now. I think it's become very mainstream. Anyway, we exhibited at that. We figured it'd be quite an interesting place to kind of show what fantasy was. So we had this exhibit, which was basically built out like at a booth, but it was built out with two sort of doors, one on either end, which were kind of like walking into a red light window in Amsterdam. It kind of had this kind of vibe. So it felt a bit futuristic and a bit kind of like this fluorescent kind of like place you walked into, a bit futuristic. And then the idea was we had all these, like, you sit down in this kind of pod, and then you put the VR goggles on and then immerse yourself in the fantasy world of Amsterdam. And the idea was that then you'd sort of move around. Each person that sat down could then choose. They'd look at different fantasies and go, well, let me try that. And then literally, most people didn't know what they were in for, because most people hadn't done a VR adult experience before. Now, what was really interesting, so the one takeaway from this experience was that I'd say that 70% of the people that signed up to be part of, to want to receive emails and be on our mailing list, 70, maybe even 80% of the people that signed up were girls, women. It was interesting. They were the ones that would, like, a girl would come in, try it out and run off and come back with all her friends. Go, you got to try this out. And they were big groups of girls really interested in just delving into this whole psychology of like delving into fantasies and really experiencing them, and even things like, had a lot of girls turning up saying, I want to be a guy. Can I be a guy? This sort of stuff was going on. And I found that really intriguing, that just how experimental and how much it felt like it was more of a female thing than a male thing. Whereas the guys were a bit more kind of, hey man, like when I went to put the goggles on their heads, they'd be like, don't put me into anything too crazy, man, stuff like that. They were a bit more conservative with their approach to it. Because I found the girls really, really flocked to it and found it a very refreshing, insight into relationships and fantasy, and it seemed a lot more, the depth of what this was resonated with a much broader market than what we expected. So yeah, we've got on our whitelist right now. There's a lot more women on there than guys, which is quite amazing.
So that's kind of surprising, and also in a way expected that maybe there would be some VR sites. I wonder if that, like statistics, there any evidence that shows that if you guys partnered with some websites, like, do you have any plans to partner with like performers, and how do you plan to like fill out this real estate that you guys have with an audience, I guess, performance, so that there's people to come and visit and have people there? Yeah,
sure. I mean, like right now, we're talking with all the usual suspects in the adult industry. So we're talking like with major brands. We're talking like from Europe to the US. We're also talking with a lot of stars. But we're really kind of looking to form a base sort of a core of like initial kind of content that's actually quite edgy and very forward thinking. Like we're talking to, I can't really say the names, but we're talking to quite a few people in the US who are quite, forward thinking in terms of fashion and how fashion and sex kind of like, merges. So we're talking to people like that. So we're trying to make it quite a cutting edge place for people to kind of visit that has all the sort of the brands that you would expect to see there, but it also has like stars and performing sort of and having their own kind of like apartments, nightclubs, what have you in there. Now, what's interesting as well with that, just the way we've been approaching people is that VR is a really interesting way for adult stars to get a passive income, because up until, if you think about how webcams work, things like that, right? Like you got to work that, you got to be online all the time, and the amount of time you spend working equals the amount of money they make, right? Whereas in VR, they only need to, an adult star only needs to do one scene, and it can work for you again and again and again, almost like it's live for months. Like it's the actual economics of how adult stars can make returns from VR is way beyond anything that you've ever seen before, because webcams, they can work that up, and the amount of time you spend on webcams, you make more money. Normal adult content is normally owned by brands, and that's you pay per view or you pay a subscription to access that. The stars themselves don't earn anything more. They get paid for the scenes they do once. That's it. They never earn any more unless they go to webcams and things. Then they can earn from their own work. So this is a whole new way that they can actually create content themselves, and actually it feels like it's live, and they only have to do it once, and it can be reused again and again. So I think we're going to see a very interesting business model is starting to happen once people understand what I'm saying. This idea of a passive income is something that I think could really work. So that's part of our pitch to get the right content in there.
To get the content creators, because
that's right.
There wouldn't be like an exclusive agreement where they could only work with your website, and there's any number of websites that performers could work with, and to attract them to your website, you could give them this offer that, I wonder if there's a way to like identify the viewer through the Gazecoin metric interface, whether a viewer has seen any given show before or any given performance by one of the artists. And then, if it's already been viewed, then I guess like a different one would a different performance would be displayed, so that it doesn't always show the same one.
Yeah, sure. Sure.
So it could distinguish between like a guest or a visitor of the city. So, so is it like set up where a guest of the city clicks and then, or how do they move about through the city?
Yeah, no, it's what I'll do is I'll actually put a video. We did a video yesterday actually, which was exactly answering that very question of how you actually do move about. And it's one of those things where until you see it, it's hard to imagine how it works. But literally imagine you are actually standing on a street corner in Amsterdam. Wherever you look, you start moving that way. That's how it works. You're not in there's no situation where you're ever looking and clicking, or so whether you're in a stagnant you're actually immersed inside a world. And you look left because you hear some sounds coming left, and you actually start to move left, right? And then as you move down the kind of street, then all of a sudden you hear some sounds on your right. You turn right, and then you stop because you've turned like at 90 degrees, right? Your head, okay. And then all of a sudden you look at something directly in front of you. You look at that for long enough, it triggers, and then it sucks you in, and all of a sudden you're inside an apartment. So you are moving around a world. Wherever you look, you go, and you don't have to click on anything. There's no need to have hand controllers and that kind of stuff. You basically move about seamlessly from place to place, experience to experience, jumping in and out of whatever you want to experience. And that's where the business model starts to kick in, because when people feel that they can have free reign to move about, and it's all microtransactions, they start forgetting about, it doesn't matter. Oh, what does that cost? What does that cost? They just do the things that are fun, and they're earning reward spending. It's a recipe to create a very, very vibrant micro transaction ecosystem, because people don't have to think anymore. They just get it. It lets the immersive nature of the experience take hold, and you just go to a different place. So it sounds kind of weird how I'm talking about it, but that's how it works. But I'll upload a video tomorrow, or even later today. We shot it yesterday, which has got me walking around doing exactly what I just told you inside the world.
Nice. Yeah, we'll link to it in the description of when we post this up online. So maybe just before we finish up, we can talk a little bit about where you guys are in terms of the next couple of weeks and how you spend your day-to-day in terms of your roles and your specific work that you're doing and what the rest of your team is doing and some of the challenges and things that are coming up.
Yeah, right now, we're really busy taking a VR world that we've originally built, which was purposed just for VR, and actually repurposing it for WebGL, meaning we're taking an immersive VR experience that was only ever built that way, which is the way that all VR things are normally built in Unity, and we're actually just having to re-output that onto a website so that basically people can have the same experience using a mouse and then jump into it whenever they feel like jumping into it by plugging their headset into their PC. It's a different kind of way of accessing it. So we're very focused on that right now and very focused on it's a whole new kind of set of IT parameters because all of a sudden you can't just rely on Vive or on Oculus Rift to basically power the experience. It's now on the web, so you're dealing with servers and load times and you're dealing with so just a different set of criteria. Whereas that was one advantage that going through an actual platform has, like PlayStation, whatever it might be. The console powers the experience, and it's all, you don't have to worry about latency, things like that. So we're very, very, very focused on that right now, and how to deliver this sort of experience that loads as you move about, things like that, right? So that people can have an experience without using the VR headset to first access it. So that's the platform sort of starting to play. Now, you'll start seeing that when the land sale opens for viewing. You'll be able to actually walk about in that fashion. That I've actually created another video actually a couple of days ago, which shows how that shows me actually moving about with my mouse. So we've already got the beginnings of that. So and then the second part to this is it's not just the experience of moving about. It's also then as you do things, you're earning coins, right? So the actual gaze analytics system triggering coins while you're moving around, those two things working in tandem are kind of our main technical challenge at the moment to get that right. And it's a thing we've already cracked. It's just scaling. How to make it scale. So basically that's the kind of main platform challenge. But then, and that also couples with there's a Gazecoin wallet, which basically stores. So you use your phone and the Gazecoin wallet to trigger the fantasy world, right? So you don't have any logins and things like that. So you're literally kind of like scanning a QR code, like I don't know if you've used WhatsApp on your computer, but it's similar to that, right? So the WhatsApp just knows who you are from the phone. So you basically trigger that, go in, and then cruise about, and then the tokens that you earn are then funneled back to your wallet because you're the one that triggered the experience. So that's the system. So we're just basically literally all day, every day testing, expanding that, and getting that ready. At the same time, we're getting this. We've launched a bounty campaign, which is essentially letting the community take charge of the marketing and promotion of the world and rewarding them in fantasy coins. So fueling the bounty campaign and focused on the platform. There are our two daily struggle or what we're focused on every morning when we meet.
Yeah. And we'll have a link down in the description for where users who want to earn some tokens can go and by participating in the bounty campaign. There's a number of
lots of great videos to share,
content creation bounties and things to share. So that you guys are working out of an office, or you guys all distributed in different cities?
No, we're all spaced in we all work out of a virtual reality studio in Sydney, Australia. That's where we're based, and we have this VR studio where we can shoot content and create the vision and the worlds inside this 360-degree green screen which we have there. So that's allowed us to perfect the art of making VR content that we need and testing it. And then we have the techies are there as well. So we've got a blockchain and VR all happening in the one space. So it's all. Some of the programmers like to work from a fintech hub down the road. but so they can kind of stay together and network. But on the whole, we're not too far away from each other in the same city right now. So
exciting, good, that's great. So I'm sure you guys are looking forward to the upcoming release, and hope that goes well. And we're excited to hear and check back and track your progress and see how things go. So I'd love to have you back on again when you launch the walkthrough period and then the auction period.
Yep.
All right. So today my guest on the show was Jonny Peters, founder and CEO of Gazecoin and FXXX. So Jonny, it's nice speaking to you. Thanks for coming on the show, and we look forward to having you on again.
No problem. Thanks so much for that. Really, really enjoyed giving you the rundown, and look forward to everyone engaging in something very new and special.
Great. Thanks. Bye.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the Bounty Zero X podcast. Please remember to subscribe to our podcast below. Check out bountyzerox.io, the #1 bounty hunting platform where you can complete work and earn cryptocurrency. Please consult your professional financial investment and tax advisors before making any investment in initial coin offerings. Bounty Zero X does not provide investment or financial advice and does not endorse or recommend investment in any ICOs advertised on the Bounty Zero X podcast or website.